Alright, it's time to take a look at the Serpentis cruiser, the Vigilant. I always want to fly this ship, all of my friends have one and they are doing really well with it. The Vigilant does look like a thorax, after all the Vigilant is based on the thorax hull, or should I say the Serpentis have stolen the thorax blueprint and they have modified it to make their own ship, but the Vigilant should be a fantastic faction cruiser, and today I will show you a lot of different ways how you can build this ship, and I'll show you the builds that I will use on this little boat. But first, let's take a look at the ship info, at the trade description. Advanced medium Raelian operation bonus will give you plus 12% medium Raelian damage, plus 10% medium Raelian accuracy valve. Advanced cruiser command bonus will give you plus 10% slice away for speed decrease, plus 10% slice away for effective range, and plus 10% warp disruptor optimal range. The classic for Serpentis ships, webs, and long range disruptors. Now the Vigilant has 1 drone, 5 high slots, 3 medium slots, 5 low slots, 3 combat, and 3 engineering rigs. 23,000 is the defense. The Vigilant is primarily a armor tank, although you can use a passive shield tank, so an active armor tank or a passive shield tank is the way to go for this ship. 3250 gigajoule is the overall capacitor volume. 606 seconds is the recharge time. Recharge rate is 13.41. Maximum lock targets 7. Signature radius 90.8. Scan resolution 325. Center strength 21.7. Flight velocity 268 meters per second. The Vigilant is one of the faster cruisers. It can theoretically be faster than a Cinnabon, although it is still slower than the Stabber 2. The Stabber 2 is the fastest cruiser in the game. 1203.02 DPS with the C-type blasters. Now this is a tank build that I did plan to use a long time ago. Dual webs that have a minus 91.5% flight velocity adjustment and 22.2 km optimal range, and a disruptor with 45 km optimal range. Medium capacity battery, dual adaptives, 1 large armor repairer, and a micro cooperative, although with this build I will definitely use a afterburner. After all, the blasters are close range and you will be within the Scaremno range, although can be used for hit and run with my cooperative, although for a longer battle an afterburner is probably the way to go, although your webs will keep all ships stationary, nothing will be able to move once webbed. Dual burst aerators and 1 collision accelerator, or you can do 3 burst aerators for a PvP DPS build, or you can actually go with a tank build if you like tank. Dual auxiliary thrusters and 1 power grid router, and 38,000 defense. Overall, I'm quite happy with the default stats on this ship. Now the nanocore is the Serpentis narcotic core, which is kinda unique, although the main reason why I have this core equipped right now is because it makes the ship look awesome. I mean, just look at the nanocore. I like it. I really do like how it makes the ship look, and my primary reason for using nanocore is, well, to make the ship look unique. But the stat on this core is also not bad, 18% damage or armor, or plus 21% flight velocity. This nanocore can get you extra web strength, web range, and I believe warp disruptor range as well, but I don't upgrade my nanocores. I always keep the primary attribute, so you have a lot of very nice upgrades if you do have this nanocore, although it is kinda rare and not really sure how it is obtainable at all. But you have a lot of nanocores to choose from. You can go with DPS, with tank, with speed. Basically it depends on what type of ship you want to build. I personally go with full DPS on my cruisers, especially on the faction cruisers, with a couple exceptions. For example, the Gila or Phantasm are tank ships. Okay, now let's take a look at the implants that you can have on this ship. You have 2 options. You have the hypercole or the thermal circulation. Now if you are going with a armor tank, the thermal circulation is definitely the way to go. You can basically pick optimal range and you can also pick extra armor. As for the general units, I will focus on armor repair and capacitor battery, although you can also focus on extra speed or efficiency. As for the secondaries, you can pick between the precision calibration and the cry armor. If you go for tank, then the 20% armor is the way to go. If you go with DPS, then the other level 15 attributes with extra optimal range is the way to go. Overall, you have a lot of options with this implant, and it doesn't have to be really high level. Level 15 is actually more than enough for the thermal circulation. It still gives you fantastic DPS. And now let's undock and let's see what's the DPS going to be like. Now I will adjust the modules in a very similar way as I adjust the modules on my other cruisers. That's basically how I like to keep the module overview. It does look clean, and I go for the clean look usually for most ships. 58,000 hit points, 79, 73, 74 and 63%, which is not bad. You still have some really terrifying DPS on this boat, and it goes almost 3000 meters per second. Decent speeds, quite happy with the velocity on the Vigilant. Now, the way how the thermal circulation implant works, you have to basically charge it, and you have to go to heat level 70 or above in order to get the maximum DPS output. Now below 30 you get the passive effects. That's why the thermal circulation is so good for armor tanks or basically any ship that uses railguns if you go for the extra optimal range. Although you have to be careful not to go above 100, because then the overheat will kick in and it will significantly reduce your DPS, and you don't want to have reduced DPS in a PvP situation. So when the heat reaches 90 or 96, turn off the implant. 2,300 DPS, which is really good for a tank build. Later on I will show you how the thermal circulation works in combat and how to use it in order to have the maximum sustained DPS with the implant. It does give you a lot more DPS than the hypercole, but it does last short, so you have to take massive advantage on that short time. And you also can use the hypercole. The hypercole has more sustained DPS, although it has overall less paper DPS. The general unit layout is going to be about the same. As for the secondaries, I like to use this current combination. Basically, for maximum possible DPS, it can reduce the resistance of your target, although a reactive armor hardener or shield hardener will be able to counter that based on what I have seen in combat. And the general units will be the same. That's the layout that I prefer to use on this ship. And now let's undock and let me show you how much DPS I can get out of the hypercole. Should be about 2000, I believe. Again, it has lower DPS than the thermal, but it does last much longer and it is easier to use. There is no overheat with the thermal circulation. At least for now. Who knows what happens in the balance patch. Okay, and you have higher cold DPS as well. Lower armor resistance and 1,500 armor repaired every 8.72 seconds with the large armor repair. And the capacitor battery has also been increased a little bit. which is fine. After all, armor tanks use a lot less capacitor. 1.9 thousand DPS. Okay, I was close. I said about 2000, but it's actually almost 2000. Still pretty solid and pretty decent in DPS. Okay, let's dock and let me show you some more,
Docking
let's say
request
some more
accepted.
aggressive builds that are more focused on a DPS while also retaining some solid tank. And of course, like I mentioned before, for a close range build, go with an afterburner. Although you can use a micro-drive, although if you do that, be careful with other ships that might out-tank you. Although they will definitely not be faster than you, so that's a good thing because you can easily move away from their webs and scramblers. After all, you have the speed advantage, doesn't matter what type of target you are fighting. With webs, with Serpentis webs, nothing will be able to move that quickly, so you have enough time to move away from the target if necessary. 1.3 km per second is the afterburner speed. Okay, I thought that I did show the afterburner, but seems I forgot. And now, on a more aggressive build. So this is basically a build that I use on my Cinnabal and a build that I use on all of my PvP ships. Maximum DPS and 1 damage control as a panic button. Now, you can replace the disruptor into a scrambler, and you can do a dual scrambler build in case the target has a lot of stabs. The one web will still slow down the target well enough, minus like 1.5% speed decrease, and now you have 8 points on the scramblers, and you can turn off the target's micro-warp drive. And for the afterburner, you can use the afterburner, and at the same time you can also use the micro-warp drive. Depends on the target. The afterburner could be good in some cases, micro-warp drive can be good in some other cases. It all depends on target. 22.2 km range and minus 91.5% speed decrease. You can do a build like this. This is one of the more recent builds that I use on the Cinnabal. It gives some fantastic tank and has fantastic speed, and it has fantastic DPS. Now with this build, you can easily go with the optimal range and fall-off attribute on the thermal circulation, and now the blasters will have longer range, and also you can do a extended unit, basically to increase the shield volume you get from the unit, from the module, which will further improve the tank. It does give you plus 23% extra shield per extender. So now the DPS is 1.5 thousand, okay, and about 54,000 hit points. Let me undock and let me show you the active stats that I have on this ship at the moment.
Undocking.
The module out will be exactly the same as the module out on the Cinnabal. Basically, that's how I like to have the setup. It does look clean, and again, I'm after that clean look. 5.85 and 11.7 kilometers is the range. It will work until heat goes above 30, and then it will go back to default. 165,000 hit points with the shield extender once the damage control is active, and you get a decent shield boost when you activate the extender. It used to give you a lot more back in the day, but the extenders have been nerfed roughly a year or two ago. Who knows what happens in this balance patch this year. 3026.18 DPS with the implant active, with one magnetic 3.7 thousand, and with the second magnetic the DPS is 4.4 thousand DPS, which is really solid for a cruiser. You know, let me show
Docking
you
request accepted.
the DPS with the high power coil implant. Will be a little bit less, however will be a lot more sustained, and both can be charged at the station or gate before warping to the target, so with both you can basically warp to the target with maximum possible DPS, and that's what I have been doing with the Thorax, that's what I have been doing with the Megaton Striker. After all, I do have the thermal circulation implant that I actively use, and I really like that implant. It does give you some pretty scary DPS. And now let's take a look at the high power coil. Higher cold damage. After all, the high power coil does give you some slight bonus on the cold damage as well. And now let me charge up the implant. Charging usually takes about not couple moments, but definitely about 20, 30, 40 seconds. The barrage implant, the drone bombs don't have that. You basically click the moment the implant is low and you get all of that DPS. 3067.95, and for the second one, the DPS is 3747.33, which honestly is about 600 DPS less, maybe even 700 DPS less than the DPS with the thermal circulation, but the DPS is a lot more sustained. You can do a build like this with dual extenders, one large and one medium. Proved itself to be very nice on the Cinnabon, could be very nice on the Vigilant as well. You have a lot of shield now, and you can do an armor plate. One armor plate is basically the maximum that you can fit. 56,000 hit points, 23,000 armor, and with armor plate you can do the same thing that you can do with the extender. Basically go to the implant and you can easily add a armor extender unit, which will give you plus 23% extra armor per armor plate, and that will increase the ship's durability and it will overall increase the tank. Basically aiming for a full-on passive fit. The DPS with the thermal will be a little bit lower, but now it's 26,000 hit points, and with the thermal circulation with a build like this you can go with the extended range, or you can also go with the extra armor resistance. The extra armor resistance will actually be very important because it's basically like having one free adaptive running at all time. And you have the damage control, so that also increases the tank even more, and all that makes this little boat surprisingly tanky with a passive fit. 2,400 DPS, 2 minutes and 20 seconds tick faster, 59,000 hit points with the damage control active. The tank is 176,000, 85, 80, 80 and 72% resistance, which is not bad, it's actually really solid. Okay, and you see you get some nice, not much armor when you click on the plate, but it does help a lot, and any armor is good armor, can absorb some damage. 3026 DPS, 3,700 DPS, and basically the DPS will be the same because I have the same two magnetic field stabilizers active, and that is also one of the reasons why the DPS is about the same as it was before. You can do a build like this with one adaptive. Basically now the ship behaves like it has two adaptives, one plate and one damage control. Now you can do a kite long range build with the medium rifled relance. All of my friends use the kite Vigilant in PvP, very successful. They do have the nanocore that gives them plus 3 points per disruptor, so they have about 6, or in some cases they have about 9 points, which is enough to hold most targets at long range. And you can do something like this with dual disruptors. You can add one tracking computer to increase the range even more. Basically, a kite Vigilant can kill an Ashimu very easily, a kite Vigilant can kill a Balgorn very easily. The goal and trick is to stay out of the Nosferatu and neutralize range. The Balgorn will not hit you above 35 kilometers with the pulse lasers, and you will have to force the Balgorn to deplete its own capacitor with the armor repair or shield boosters, depends on what type of Balgorn it is. In order to maximize the range, you can add a range general unit, and that will increase your range a lot more. And the Kite Vigilant works really good with the thermal circulation implant, because the thermal circulation can give you that plus 25% extra fall off an optimal range. So I will go and equip the thermal circulation, and then I'll equip the tracking computer general unit for range, and then I should have about 47 kilometer optimal, which means that I can safely orbit a Balgorn at 42 and slowly kill it. Well, technically slowly, although you still have some good DPS at that range, so if you want to hunt Balgorns, a Kite Vigilant is definitely the way to go. It's fast, and it can hold the Balgorn from a very long distance. 40.67, 30.5 is the accuracy fall-off, pretty good. And if you want even more range, because the default DPS is already more than enough, you can go with dual tracking computers. 47.76 km is the optimal, accuracy fall-off 35.82 km. A perfect build for long range combat, a perfect build to kill Blood Raider ships, or basically any ship that has a close range build. Now for a PvE build, I would do something like this: one medium Nosferatu to maintain the capacitor, triple magnetic field stabilizers, one large armor repair, and one afterburner. In high sec, you don't really need a lot of tank. In high sec, you need a lot of DPS. In low sec, I would use a PvP build, because in low sec you might be jumped, and the Vigilant can be very hard to catch.
Destination reached.
For low sec, I would definitely do the Kite Vigilant with a
Warp
PvP
drive
build.
active.
Basically, you can run the storyline mission with a PvP build. That way, if someone tries to attack you, you can easily kill them, because the Vigilant has the speed advantage, range advantage, and that's more than enough to kill the attacker. If they get close, you have webs, you web them, they will be stationary, and you kill them. Now, the one problem that you will probably encounter is the tracking. Now, the tracking is solid. However, when you web the target down and they basically stop moving and you keep orbiting, sometimes the tracking on your turrets will not be enough. So again, targets like interceptors, frigates, faction frigates, in some cases even destroyers, use the at range option, or basically in this game approach, and set the approach to 5-7 kilometers. That will ensure that the transfer velocity will be low, and it will ensure that you have enough tracking to hit the target, and then you open fire. Never orbit a small target with the afterburner, because in most cases your tracking will not be enough to keep up with the ship. So you have to do some manual flying, or you have to do the keep at range option. Both work, although just remember that if you are starting to miss the target, try manual orbiting and try the keep at range option. Against cruisers, you can orbit. The Vigilant should have enough tracking to hit the cruisers. Same can apply to battlecruisers and battleships. You can safely orbit around those. You have enough tracking, they are big ships, and you will have enough accuracy to hit them. Technically, you can improve that with the tracking computers, but you will also know that yes, so it's the best thing to use the manual orbit or keep at range. If you are fighting a cruiser and if the cruiser is webbing you, then you will probably have enough tracking to to hit them if you are orbiting. If you have scrambled, then you will definitely have the accuracy and tracking to hit the target. So basically, if someone does slow you down, they're basically helping you to hit them, and you can use that as your advantage. With Afterburner, you can easily speed tank while being webbed, and you can have enough tracking and accuracy to hit the target. So, the speed on the ship with Afterburner can be improved, although about to 1.4, 1.5 kilometers per second might be, I would say, the optimal speed. With the micro drive for a kite, basically 4-5 kilometers per second would be the optimal speed. And for that you would have to use multiple auxiliary thrusters, so the build will have to be slightly changed, although in the grand scale it is not going to be, I would say, that important in some rare occasions where you have to fight something really quick than having the ship go above.
We're under attack.
Above 4 or 5 kilometers per second
We're
would be
being warp scrambled.
probably a good idea, although there is a lot of different
We're under attack.
scenarios that you have to account for. Now the
Shield damage.
main threat for the Vigilant can be the Ordus, can also be the Cinnabal, a barrage Cinnabal to be more accurate. The Ashimo perhaps, but the Ashimo is unfortunately not really that important anymore, unless they change some aspects of the game. The Ashimo might be one of the worst faction cruisers right now, which is a little bit sad because back in the day the Ashimo was the most terrifying one, and I used to fly one. Was a really fun to fly a little boat. Although nowadays I fly the Cinnabal, and recently I also started to fly the Vigilant. I think I did show you the Vigilant I used in one of the recent videos that I did. I think it was the PvP one. One thing that I haven't done with my Vigilant is I haven't skilled some of the medium railgun skills. That's the thing that I am improving right now. So the boat isn't exactly combat ready just yet, but it's getting there. As you all know me, I like to have my ships prepared. Always fly ships that you have skills for. That way you can take maximum possible advantage of your ship. Now I'm using the thermal circulation here, and as you can see I have been siphoning through. Basically I try to turn it off at about 94, 90, 96 or 98 heat. If it hits 100, well, goodbye DPS. So make sure that you stop the implant before it overheats, because you really don't want to be caught in the cooldown. It takes about a full minute for the cooldown to make the DPS go back up, and a full minute is a very long time. So this implant is kind of a high risk, high reward type of thing. It does give you a lot of DPS, but you have to be careful not to mess it up, because if you mess it up, well, then you might be in trouble. Now it does give you some extra DPS when it's overheated, some extra thermal, but it significantly reduces the ship's rate of fire. Basically, it makes the ship fire like large artillery cannons, large projectile turrets, and that's that's not a good thing.
Enemy ships detected.
So with this implant, you have to
We're
make sure
under
that you
attack.
don't overheat it. With the high protocol, you don't have to worry about that. Although you also get lower
We're under
DPS,
attack.
and I'm not really sure how that will be changed in the future. Perhaps it remains the same, perhaps the developers change some things. One thing is for sure though, we will see some nerfs. Not for sure what will be nerfed. But we already have seen the, what was it called? We have seen the focus crystal being nerfed. And we will probably see the pulse crystal next, or the barrage implant. Also, perhaps we might even see some of the other implants being introduced to the game. There's a lot of possibilities that there's also things that might happen on the April balance patch. Okay, I'm back. Alright, we had some... I had to look at the other screen for a second. We had a Macarial in a mission. Well, there's no Macarial anymore. Now the Macarial is a wreck, but it was a very... let's say it was a very exciting kill. Alright, now back to the Vigilant. Hopefully nothing else can distract me from recording. We will see. Always, when I record, there's always something that happens. Every time I click on that record button, a faction battleship pops in, or a faction cruiser, or an Orcus, or things like that. It's kind of hilarious. But that's just how my luck goes. So, the Vigilant has been performing really well so far. A very fun little boat. This build is primarily for high sec. Don't use a build like this in low sec because it's just not going to end well, especially with so many pirates flying around. But for high sec you get good tank, you get good DPS, and you can pull some very nice clear times with this boat. So overall, I am personally very happy with how it works. It can replace a lot of ships. It also can make the game a bit more exciting for players. Depends on if you like to fly cruisers, of course. In my case, I'm primarily a cruiser pilot, and I did have the chance to basically fly all cruisers. Well, now I actually did fly all cruisers. I think the Vigilant was the only one that I didn't fly that much, but this is indeed a fantastic little boat, and if you want to try out the Vigilants, well, I can definitely give you the green light to go and buy one. The Vigilant is a fantastic little boat, has some very scary DPS. It also has some very nice speed, and it can have some very nice range as well. So with that being said, hope that you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. I love you all, fly safe, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.